Yo, sup? Paul Catalina's Top 5, presented by Texas Beef House. That was today's greeting. Hope you enjoyed it. Top 5 best Big 12 non-conference games. We saw a bunch of times drop for the first couple weeks and even some later on in the season today. So went through some of those non-conference games to highlight some of the better ones. Number 5. BYU versus SMU, September 6th, the 6 o'clock kick. This is a Friday night game. BYU should be improved from last year. SMU will be a team on a mission as they are now a power conference team and a nice little warm-up for both teams before they jump into the stretch of their conference schedule. By the way, a quick note on this. I did not include Baylor and Utah, even though that is a non-conference game because it's kind of a conference, non-conference game. So that one is out of this list. So before you put it in the comments, not going to be on the list because of that little technical difficulty there. But BYU and SMU, I like this one. I'm very curious to see what happens with Gary Bohannon at quarterback, if he can reestablish running the wide zone like he did a few years ago at Baylor when he helped lead the Bears to a Big 12 title. And we'll see what Rhett Lashley has up his sleeve in a nice little matchup before they dive into the ACC. Number 6, dear God, I'm getting old. Colorado at Nebraska, a big game for Colorado as they head on the road to a very tough place to play, and a place that will be tougher to play than it was even last year because Nebraska, given Matt Rule's track record, will be better in year 2 than they were in year 1. This is a 6:30 kickoff, so it should be pretty rowdy in Lincoln. Big game for Shadur Sanders. Big game also for Dylan Raiola, who is probably going to be the starter as a true freshman for Nebraska, helping reestablish that Cornhusker and Raiola legacy there for the Big Red. Number 3, Kansas State versus Tulane, an 11 a.m. kick on September the 7th. This one is intriguing in a couple different ways. One, look, Tulane, John Sumrall, this is his first big test as their head coach as he takes over for Willie Fritz, who left to go to Houston. Also, for Kansas State, this was a trap game a few years ago. When they won the Big 12, they did start out the year early on losing to Tulane. So in no way are the Wildcats going to take this lightly with Chris Klieman, and they will be ready for it. But I expect, even though Tulane, not the same team they were last year, lost their quarterback Michael Pratt, obviously, to graduation, this should be a different Tulane team. I expect a tough Tulane team because I'm a big John Sumrall fan, and that was a great hire for the Green Wave and should be a nice early season test for the Wildcats as they seek to put their name on the national stage in the first year of the 12-team playoff. Number 2, Texas Tech at Wazoo. Sadly, this guy won't be at either place, Mike Leach, as he has gone on to the great beyond and will be up watching from up above. But this is the Mike Leach Bowl here. Should be really interesting for Joey McGuire going on the road into Wazoo and what that environment's going to be like, the history of Mike Leach with both those schools, the Mike Leach Trophy. I think they should call this the Pirate Trophy since he coached at both these schools. Maybe work Mississippi State into a rotation with these as well early on, just so we can hear Mike Leach stories all week leading up to it. But should be a really interesting game and a big one for Texas Tech. Remember, last year they, a couple years ago, went on the road and struggled and lost to Wyoming, away from Lubbock. Is this a road environment that they can finally shake off the we're not good on the road, even though they improved on the road last year? Can they do that? This is a nice test for them early in the season and late at night on the West Coast as well. So should be lit at Washington State. And number 1, West Virginia versus Penn State, August 31st, a big noon kickoff. This is a huge one for both schools, but West Virginia in particular. This was a game last year where most people thought West Virginia was going to get throttled. Penn State handled them, but West Virginia kind of showed they had moxie. Now they get them at home in Morgantown, a chance to really put a charge into James Franklin and a coach in James Franklin that has been vulnerable to games like this throughout his career, where Penn State plays a team that's kind of equal to them and maybe doesn't pull off that win. I think this should be a big one for what's going to be a spectacular offense in West Virginia this year with the running game they have, with Garrett Green another year at quarterback, and some of the receiving threats they have, an experienced offensive line and a defense that should be pretty solid, and Neal Brown continuing to try to prove that he deserves that job in spite of last year where I think he did it. This year even goes further, a win against Penn State and then following up with a win against Pitt later on in the season could be huge and get a lot of monkeys off of Neal Brown's back at West Virginia. That is today's Top 5. Thanks for watching. We're wrapping it up right now.